Good evening, everybody. Steve here. How are you? Welcome to another Wednesday 6:30 webinar. Thanks, everybody, for jumping on board and being on time and all that sort of jazz as usual. So this is part 3 of a 3-part series. Part 1 is on YouTube. Part 2 should be on YouTube very shortly. If you want to find those previous 2 episodes, then we should be able to dig those up for you. And today is part 3, and we're going to try and come to a form of conclusion to help you aim your property investing in a better location, really, and get the things moving along. Now, as always, a quick disclaimer saying that this is generic and classroom advice. It's not specific individual financial advice for individual people. And if you want that, then please see a registered and licensed and authorized financial advisor, which is super standard stuff, right? Excellent. So going right back 3 weeks ago for the very, very first one that we did of these, I recommended that the first thing that most people should do in order for them to really kick their property investing into goal achieving zone is figure out exactly firstly where you are at. And that's why one of the very, very first freebies that I gave out was my property portfolio spreadsheet. Now, as I said, it was really, really useful if everybody online on that first one would fill this in and extrapolate it right out to the very far right-hand bottom corner of this spreadsheet. So what it actually means is that you put in the purchase date of every property you've currently got in your portfolio, even if it's just one property. And then you put in how much you owe on it, who you owe it to, how much you're paying off on it, and what the valuation of the property would be at the moment. And so what you end up with on the very far right-hand side is all of the outgoings and costs and expenses for each individual property, which will include mortgage rates, management, insurance, occupancy issues, all that type of thing. And then it's going to give you a cash flow figure on the far right-hand side. Now, a lot of people, those cash flow figures, if you're being realistic with yourself, or if it's a new purchase, they will be negative. That means that the property will be negatively geared, and it means that you will be feeding some money into it each week. The intent, the idea, the that we're really trying to go for is either now or eventually for each of these to be positive, meaning that they actually put money into your pocket every single week. And I'll explain exactly what I think an actual cash flow positive property is a little bit later on. But what I really wanted to do firstly was just to make sure everybody got that spreadsheet, everybody filled it in, everybody had this starting position, because I think that it's very, very important to have this starting position nailed down so that you know actually where you are right now. So that in a year's time or 2 years' time, you can look back at this spreadsheet versus your new property portfolio spreadsheet, and you can see and track progress. I think that's the most important thing. The next thing we talked about was entities and structures and GRA and trust and accounts and bits and pieces. A lot of people took us up on the referral link for a free consult there, which is great. And then last week, what we looked at was this capacity discussion tool. Now, what this basically is it means that you put in all of your, instead of each individual property, you put in your entire portfolio into this capacity discussion tool, and it gives you a really good idea as to whether you would be able to borrow more money right now, and if so, a rough idea of how much it might be that you could borrow if you could borrow more money right now. And I think that that's a very useful tool as well, because banks are out there looking to lend money. Brokers are out there looking to help you borrow money, and interest rates are very low. They've come down again today, with most of the main street banks bringing their 6 months and 12 months rate down, and even the 18 months rate is very, very low. I've seen as low as 4.85 just today for an 18 months rate, which, if you like me, you spend a lot of time on TradeMe analyzing deals and looking for cash flow, makes a lot of stuff look really, really good at the moment. So this capacity discussion tool will give you a really good idea of whether you can take your financial self to a bank and get a pre-approval, and therefore be able to borrow money, buy a house, get something that's cash flow positive. Fantastic. And then we looked also at retirement planning, and I used my very rough idea of a retirement planning tool, which was how much money do you need per week, multiply that by 52 weeks, and then multiply it by 25 years to get a core number. Now, obviously, my target for my retirement is to replace actually working for a living with passive income. And my chosen goal of doing that is through capital gains, and it's through cash flow positive residential investment property. So in my retirement planning guide, if you like, the top thing there, I've figured out how much money I need. And funnily enough, to let you inside a bit of my thinking, it tops out at about $10,000 a week cash flow positive after all costs, expenses, and taxes. And that's the target that I've been working towards for the last couple of years. Absolutely everything covered. Steve doesn't lift a finger. Occupancy's organized, management, maintenance, absolutely everything's nailed, plus all the income, plus all the tax on the income, and I still get $10,000 a week. So I started really thinking about how many houses I actually needed to get there. And it's not a linear number because not all houses are made different, made the same. And so I really did want to have like a rough idea of what is a cash flow positive house and how does that line up. And having worked on hundreds of portfolios for hundreds of people every year for the last 20 years as a property coach, what I've found is that, and this is an ongoing theme, most people are willing to accept way too low a cash flow number. They're not getting a high enough yield on their money. So let's consider this then. We can borrow money at the moment at under 5%, but let's call it 5% for a nice round figure. We could borrow money at 5% for fixed for 3 years at the moment. And so it makes everything start to look a lot cheaper. It makes properties start to look like they're a lot more able to be purchased and achievable. But at 5%, you also have to add nearly 2% in for costs, because 5% is just there to cover your mortgage. The next 2% is rates, management, maintenance, occupancy issues. So really 7% becomes kind of a break-even figure, if that makes sense. So then most people look at an 8% returning property and go, well, that's great, I'll take that, that's brilliant. Well, I'm sorry, but it's just really not, because we won't have interest rates at 5% forever. This is the 25-year average for fixed interest rates in New Zealand right now is 7.25%. So we're actually a lot below that average. We're in an environment where getting money from the bank is actually really quite cheap. And so I think that we need to be looking at least 9% returns net for it to be long-term cash flow positive. And then what is cash flow positive as well? So I'm getting to explaining a bit about that as well. But to supercharge your investings and get to those goals that you have a lot earlier. And ultimately, I think, fight me in the comments here if you like, but I think the ultimate goal that most Kiwi property investors are looking for is passive income, capital gains, but passive income first. The reason they want that passive income is they want to replace their active income, the day job, the thing that you have to do for 40 hours a week to keep food in the fridge. Most people want to replace that first. That's the first and premium and number one thing that most people are looking to do up front. Because once you do that, say you're on $100,000 a year, you get a few properties under your belt and you have $100,000 a year cash flow positive coming into your portfolio. You then have the option, you might not take it, but you have the option of leaving your job and considering yourself retired from the day job and able to then spend a lot more time working on your property portfolio full time. That's the way most New Zealand property investors, I believe, consider it. They're not going to retire and play golf. They're not going to stop working at 40 and just travel for the rest of their lives. They realistically do want the option of doing other things and achieving and finding more goals for themselves. So what we've done is we've analyzed your portfolio and your portfolio spreadsheet. We've reviewed your retirement needs, and you know that you've got a target number, might be huge number, but you've got a target number to try and achieve, and you know how much you've got. So now we're looking at your ability to borrow, but we're also looking at closing that gap, quite honestly. So you know what your passive income number is. So really then it's actually not terribly hard to figure out how many houses you need based on an average house cash flow, to figure out how many you need to be able to not need any more houses ever again, not to buy any more houses, just to absolutely have the cash flow that you're targeting and that you're looking for. So let's have a quick deep dive then at how much money do you need? What is cash flow positive? Because believe it or not, I've had some fights online this week about what cash flow positive actually means. Mostly with real estate agents, which I apologize for because it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. But cash flow positive is that all fixed costs, and a fixed cost is a cost that you can't get away from. And I'll start with 100% mortgage. It's not an 80% mortgage and you put in 20% cash. It's 100% mortgage on principal and interest, including rates and insurance, management if you're going to not self-manage, and a little bit of maintenance costs. If the property covers all of that and then leaves some left over, then it's cash flow positive. Now, I'm going to go a little bit further than that and say that if the property is neutral, meaning it covers all of those costs with nothing else, from neutral through to $50 per week per property, I'm going to call that neutral. Anything under $50 a week positive is kind of neutral because it's not making you enough money to be worthwhile owning it, if that makes sense. You're not making enough money to be like stupidly happy bragging about it. So to my mind, the way that I look at cash flow is real cash flow is $200 per week positive cash flow. Now, the reason I say that is that $50 a week or less cash flow positive per property, we know there's a big difference between really expensive properties and really cheap properties, rural properties, et cetera, et cetera. But if it's less than $50 a week, I'm sorry, but one maintenance issue wipes out your cash flow for a year. One increase in rates or in insurances or the rate of the mortgage debt, one problem like that wipes out your cash flow for a year quite easily. So I believe, and I'm going to stand on my ground on this one and absolutely fight me in the comments if you like, but unless it's $200 per week cash flow positive, it's neutral. Anything more than that, fantastic. I saw a property this week that was actually traded through Shanker Others, a Nexus property out of Auckland, that was $70,000 a year cash flow positive. That's really, really positive. Absolutely great. But if we were to imagine the absolute average property in your portfolio was $200 a week cash flow positive, then realistically 3 houses that you own will double your New Zealand superannuation. The New Zealand super is $600-700 per week in retirement. So 3 houses and you've doubled the super repayment. I think that's pretty good, but it's only a starting position. So what's after that? Probably 5 houses. 5 houses should have most people in a comfortable style of retirement. And these are inflation proof too, because yes, costs and expenses will go up. Yes, interest rates will fluctuate, but so will rents. In an inflationary market, when inflation is going up, one of the things that inflation is acted upon is rent. And so rents will go up as well as inflation does as well. And so it is an inflation bridge, and it does protect you from inflation to a degree. There's going to be some wriggle room. There's going to be some moments where it's a little bit out of whack. And then for my mind, my way of thinking, and once again, like there's a comment section there for a reason, just hit it hard if you like, and feel free to disagree with me. But I think most Kiwi investors are pretty much free when they get to 10 houses. I think 10 houses that you don't live in yourself, or 9 in an owner-occupier, or 10 plus 1, whatever it might be, 10 houses, you have pretty much made it. Now, at that point, it's up to you as to whether you want to be a major or a large real estate investor full-time after that, or a little bit like myself, once I got to that point, I started looking at it and going, do you know the easiest way for me to get additional cash flow from 10 houses onwards is to make sure that they're all massively cash flow positive and then start to actually pay down debt, because having less mortgage across my 10 properties in my portfolio actually impacts my cash flow more than buying more properties does sometimes. Gonna get some hate for that one too, I imagine, but here we go. We're here now, right? So I think for the financially astute who really want to push it and really give it a nudge, 10 houses is your initial target. They can be rural, they can be apartments, they can be blocks of flats, they can be anything you like, but they've got to be or close to that $200 a week cash flow positive. And if you do that and achieve that, your lending position will get stronger and stronger as you roll through it, which means that the banks should and will lend you more and more money without having a stuck issue, if that makes sense. The problem, global problem, I suppose, with that, and you might have seen this recently, is that most people get tripped up because they accept too little a cash flow. They find a property, they keep offering on it, negotiating until they've got it under offer or they've got it secure, and then they buy it out of obligation because they've negotiated it this far and they're just not cash flow positive or they're not good deals. And I've seen this again and again this week. I don't know if some of you have been following me on the Facebook page, but hey, I'll tell you guys because we're friends, right? But like for the first time this week, the Steve Goody Property Coach Facebook page, which I spend an awful lot of time making content and putting content onto, hit a massive milestone this week. And their page has never, ever hit this milestone before. And it did this week. And I must admit, I'm pretty proud of this. We hit 2 million views this month. So my little private Facebook page about my silly stories and beating up on real estate agents and buying houses and trying to create wealth for everybody in cash flow had 2 million people see it this month. I'm blown away by that. I thought that was nuts. So one of the things that I'm doing on that series on my Facebook page is a thing called Will It Cash Flow? And in all reality, what I'm doing is chucking into a search engine on Trade Me for any property in the country, the 2 words cash flow positive. And I'm looking for real estate agents who are claiming that a property is cash flow positive. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to find cash flow positive properties on Trade Me. And trust me, they don't exist. There aren't any. I've had agents tell me that it's cash flow positive if I put a $40,000 deposit down. I'm like, well, yeah, but where's the income from the 40 grand deposit? I've looked at flats, I've looked at apartments, I've looked at commercial properties. I looked at a property and the agent came back and said, well, yeah, it's cash flow positive if you don't count the rates and insurance. And I said, well, what the hell, bro? Like, what world are you living in? How are you not paying for rates and insurance on a property? How do you get away with that? Because that's bullshit, right? That's just crazy talk. You have to. That's a fixed cost. So what they actually mean is, hey, we really want to market and sell this property, and yeah. And the one that I love the most is they tell you it's cash flow positive, and you say, great. Well, what's the buy price? How much are you asking for? Oh, well, it's for negotiation. We'll say, well, if you don't have a fixed price that you're buying it for, how are you figuring out whether it's cash flow positive? It just blows my mind. These agents, they don't know what cash flow positive actually is. They don't know what it means. They say the pretty words, but they don't get it. They just 100% don't know. They are making this shit up as they go along. It blows my mind. Anywho, so what I found was there's no cash flow positive on Trade Me. What there is, though, is 41,000 listings in New Zealand at the moment of properties, and a lot of them are really motivated. And you can't necessarily find cash flow positive just sitting there. But what you can do is you can make it. You can make it cash flow positive yourself. And it looks like a whole pile of hard work, or sometimes it doesn't. And what do they look like? I've got a bit of a list here. They look like motivated sellers. We've definitely got one of those tomorrow where I've got a leaky home going to auction in Wellington tomorrow with a $1 reserve. Now, if I'm the only man in the room and I bid $1, I will own that property. And I don't think it's a gift. There's no finance available on it. There's no insurance on the property. It's connected to another one, so you can't knock the property over. But these properties are out there, and that property will sell for. Whoa, look, I'll film it tomorrow and I'll bring it to the Facebook page. I'll give you some, bits and pieces on it. But I reckon that'll be $140,000, something like that. The GV is 700 or something. So they're motivated sellers. They're unfinished projects. These are houses that have been stripped out and nobody's been able to finish them. And just fixable problems like cosmetically distressed stuff that's ugly, cosmetic renovations, to a heap of spare room conversions. You wouldn't believe how many properties I've seen where they've got a dining room or a massive laundry, and it's a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom house that could be a 3 or a 4-bedroom house. And for a couple of $1,000s, you can convert it from 3 to 4 bedrooms. And instead of being $550 a week, suddenly it's $675 a week. And then it's cash flow positive by my mythical plus $50 per week. The other one that I've really enjoyed lately is subdivisions. Anything over a 500-600 square meter section, move the house onto the back, build a new one on the front, minor dwellings, cabins, granny flats, all that type of stuff. You buy the land once, and if you can get 2 income streams out of it, you can push that yield higher and higher and higher. So what I'm finding at the moment is I'm buying properties that doesn't really hit my cash flow targets, but they are returning between 8 and 9% net. But if they have the list underneath me there of options that are available within those properties, meaning that I can add a cabin to it, add some renovation, basically push the rent a lot higher or get 2 income streams out of one property, then I can get it to 10 or 11% and it can give me $200 a week. And then it's a hold property. It goes into my long-term hold portfolio. Off it ticks. There's one in Auckland at the moment, which is sitting on Trade Me, and it's 2 4-bedroom flats in one house with a brand new code of compliance coming. And each flat has a dining room, a lounge, and a study. Well, to me, that's not 2 4-bedroom flats. That's 2 6-bedroom flats. That's the way it can be rented out, but the agent can't say that. But we can do it. Absolutely, we can. And I looked at that one, and that was for negotiation anywhere between $1.1 and $1.4 million. And that would easily be cash flow positive, more than $200 per week with 80% occupancy rate. And that's just sitting on Trade Me. So the problem with this all is that most property investors get very, very nervous taking any sort of punt. They want everything laid out for them. And you've got to take that punt. You've got to look at Trade Me. You've got to find these deals. You've got to re-engineer the cash flow so that it becomes massively cash flow positive. Because how important is it? You only need 3 of these to double your super. You need 5 to be retired. You need 10 to be 100% completely sorted. So if you continue to buy the right properties that are massively cash flow positive, and they're going to add to your portfolio value every month and every year and help you pay principal and interest down, you end up with a portfolio that looks something like mine. Now, I've got 5 or 6 houses in my portfolio that I paid somewhere around $500,000 on them, and they've all got mortgages of low 300s on them now after, say, 10 or 12 years of paying principal and interest off them. But they're all worth around $1 million. So that's built up some massive equity in there. But I don't need the equity. What I'm after is the cash flow. And they cash flow $500 or $600 or $700 per week, cash flow positive. And these aren't boarding houses. Boarding houses are another level again. Most of my boarding houses are about $1,000 a week, cash flow positive. Huge, huge cash flow. These are just standard, standalone family 2 and 3 bedroom properties. Of course, now I'm putting minor dwellings and units and pumping that cash flow up and getting some incredible results out of those. So I've created a situation within my coaching program. It's in the name, Steve Goody, property coach, right? We knew this was coming. I've created a situation there where I've normalized the hell out of really, really pushing that cash flow and making things really massively cash flow positive so that me and all of my clients can continue to borrow money and continue to buy more and more properties. Now, I'm at a point where I've got more than 10 properties in Wellington, and I'm overexposed to the Wellington market, so I'm actually now buying heaps in Auckland. I'm looking real hard at cash flow stuff in Auckland right now. That's my next target. Let's go that way. So how would you like, as a conclusion to this 3-part webinar series, I'm going to offer you something that I have absolutely never done before. And Rome's going to bang the link into the comments section there. What we're actually going to do is, now that you've got your portfolio spreadsheet, you've got an idea of how much money you can borrow, and you understand a little bit about, I suppose, the mentality of what I'm trying to achieve with cash flow positive portfolios, what I'm going to offer everybody here is a strategy call, which means a Zoom call or a phone call with me or one of my members of my team. And we've never ever done this before, but I just thought it's the middle of winter and we don't want to get some stuff done. And I don't want anybody on this Facebook page or in my crew or group to miss out on incredibly low interest rates and really cheap houses, which are everywhere at the moment. So on the strategy call, what we're going to do is, it's a live one-to-one call, either you and me or you and one of my crew. And we're going to talk at looking at your actual financial position. We're going to look at your spreadsheets. We're going to make a recommendation of where we think that you should buy next. Not physically where, but like, do you need equity? Do you need cash flow? What are the buying criteria that you should be putting in as rules for yourself for your next purchase? So it's definitely related to actually you and your portfolio. Do you need more equity so that you can continue to borrow the next one? Or do you need more cash flow so you can continue to borrow and be a more powerful borrower in that regard? We also recommend, if we think you need to go and have a conversation with a mortgage broker, set up your statement of financial position, or go directly to your bank to get a pre-approval, because then you've got your portfolio, your ability to borrow, a pre-approval, and you know what it is you're actually looking to purchase. Hugely, hugely important. And obviously, it goes without saying, those of you that have followed me around for a while, you can't buy houses off us. We're not selling houses. We teach you guys how to fish. You go to jump on Trade Me and you find them for yourself. We're not going to be selling you some off-the-plan apartment because we get a commission out of it. That's just not what we do. What we do is we run a coaching program. So we will spend probably a couple of minutes talking to you about whether my coaching program would suit you and your portfolio and your investing at the time as well, and answer any questions you like there too. Likewise, anybody that's really dealt with me over the years will know that we don't do the hard sell. So this is purely a strategy call where we're going to give you a little bit of direction, give you some thoughts and ideas based on the homework that you've done in the last 3 webinars, this one and the last 2 for the last 2 weeks. You guys have been with me for that whole period of time, and I really, really do appreciate it. And I hope absolutely everybody online tonight takes advantage of that link, which is down in the comments there at the moment, where you can actually pull up a calendar, and you can book in your strategy call with me or my team at a time that suits you over the next week or so. And we will talk to you, like, as I said, about your financial position, what your portfolio actually needs at the moment. We've covered that a lot. And I'm just all cash flow at the moment. Cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. But yours might be equity, and we will have a look at that with you. And we will talk about my coaching program and whether it might suit your needs and supercharge your property investing through the rest of this downturn in property and into the warmth and the grow up again that's coming out the other side as well. All right. The link is up there at the moment. I think that we've got about 20 spaces available for people who want to have one of those strategy calls with us. I'm going to leave that one up there for you guys to book in and grab your link. And I'm going to sit here for a little bit and answer a few more questions as well. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your time tonight. Once again, try to keep it under half an hour. Did pretty well. Yeah. Bang a comment in. Tell us what you think. And booking your strategy calls now. We look really forward to speaking to you this week and next week and moving forward from there. Have a great evening, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye.